And hello and welcome to Encore Learning's annual meeting of members. Thank you for voting for the new slate of officers who will transition into their roles in the new fiscal year, which begins July 1st. I am Marilyn Marton, President, chairing the meeting today. On your screen, you will see the agenda for today's meeting. Please note that there's the opportunity for any questions you may have at the end of our presentations. You can put them in Q&A or we can have you raise your hand. But before I turn this over to Dick Juhnke, who served as the chair of the nominations committee, let me take a moment to give a shout out to Gail Metzler. Gail is leaving the board at the end of this year, but we thank her for all of her years training and recruiting class aides. She brought grace, humor, charm, and goodwill to a very important role. We'll miss you, Gail. And now over to you, Dick, who will announce the results of our election for committee chairs and other officer positions.
Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you, Marilyn. We have received 210 absentee ballots, representing 22% of our membership, more than satisfying our quorum requirements. So this meeting can confirm election results and conduct other business. I'd like to express my appreciation to my fellow members of the nominating committee, Kathy Sheehan, Ed Rader, who, by the way, had a terrific letter to the editor in the Post this morning, Ellen Marcus and Sandra Borden for all their hard work. And we all thank those current board members who agreed to continue to serve. And we believe the one new board member on this year's slate will be a strong and positive addition to the board. 208 of the 210 voting members voted in favor of the entire slate. There were 2 ballots that withheld voting for a specific nominee. And now let me announce the newly elected officers, chairs, and co-chairs. Marilyn Marton, President. Mildred Patterson, Vice President. Steve Shapiro shouldn't be on this list, but I'll get to him later, okay? Jean Labella, Academic Programs Committee Co-Chair. Deb Spiro, Academic Programs Committee Co-Chair. Carol Fuller, Class Aides. John Metzler, Class Aides. David Briggs, Community Advisory Board. Marty Saddam, Information Technology. Richard Rubin, Information Technology. Jean Falvey, Membership. Ann Kopp and Bill Riley, Publications. Chris McLaughlin, Special Events. And Jane Naj, Volunteer. Barry Ginsburg, Vice President. Steve Shapiro, Treasurer. And Joan Carter, Secretary, will be serving their second year of their two-year terms. And past President Tom Adams is an ex officio member of the board. Now I'd like to welcome the newest board member, John Metzler, co-chair of Class Aides, to introduce himself.
Okay, I retired from the federal government in 2008, where I worked with a lot of professionals like myself, which I would characterize as applied academics. In retirement, I started to audit courses at Georgetown University until I discovered Encore Learning, which was so much easier to get to, and was also without classes that shared the perspectives of young undergraduates and graduate students. I gave a course on the Large Hadron Collider first in 2015 and then in 2018. This experience gave me a new and better appreciation for the perspective of instructors and for the support provided by the Encore staff. I have volunteered to be a class aide whenever I can and for many years. Some encorees may say that I'm a slow learner, but I say I have had a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to being class aide and to bringing the various perspectives of volunteer class aides, the staff of Encore, and the instructors together so that all may continue to have as positive experience of Encore as I have had. That's it.
Thank you, John, and welcome as our newest board member and Class Aide co-chair. And many thanks to Dick and the nominating committee for taking on this important task, and for our chairs and officers for being willing to serve. Congratulations to all. Now, a quick overview of what we've accomplished this past year. We have been successful in not only maintaining members post-COVID, but actually increasing our ranks. We presently have over 1,000 members, an increase of almost 100 from last year. Thanks to all of you for taking up Tom Adams' challenge to all of us last year and being successful in finding new members. We have a great fall and spring semesters this year. The Academic Programs Committee, co-chaired by Jean Labella and Deborah Shapiro, have done an excellent job making this happen. In the fall, we had 30 classes, 15 in person, 12 virtual, 3 hybrid. And we've just finished our spring semester with 34 classes, of which 16 were in person, 15 were virtual, and 3 were hybrid. And for next fall, we're planning 37 classes, 18 in person, 14 virtual, and 5 hybrid. We hope to continue to record some courses and be able to make them available later, and we'll update you on that as we further deal with that issue. You can see that we work very hard to provide a variety of options, hybrid, in person, for our courses, but you also need to know that what we offer is often based on what our instructors prefer. The fall catalog will be online in early August, and the course preview will be held virtually on September 6th. So mark your calendars. We consistently get great reviews for our classes from participants, with some of the most frequent comments being, "More from this instructor. We love this instructor," or "This subject is fascinating. We want more on that subject." We love that feedback, but we're always looking for new instructors. So if any of you would like to experience the fun of sharing your own knowledge and engaging in wonderful discussions with fellow Encore Learning members, please get in touch. We welcome new ideas and new instructors. Our membership committee has also been very busy and successful this past year. They hosted an Encore Learning reception and information table at an Arlington Philharmonic concert this winter, which I think many of you attended. They're also planning on hosting the Philharmonic again this June, later next month, for the Philharmonic's Pops in the Park concert, which will be at Lubber Run Amphitheater on June 23rd. Watch your emails for an update on this program. The membership committee has also been seeking direct input from members. They recently called 100 individual members to ask what questions they may have about Encore Learning, how to improve, what they like or don't like. And they also completed a member demographic survey. The results of that survey have given them awareness of the need to seek a more diverse mix of members, including a broader cohort of race, ethnicities, income levels, ages, and those with disabilities. Another highlight of the year was the rich variety of special events offered, tours and talks. These events give all of us an opportunity to hear about timely and historic topics. I thank the Special Events Committee for their great work, chaired by Chris McLaughlin, and for all of the issues that they bring to our attention. Louise Kenny, who is also on the committee, will tell us more about special events in just a few minutes. Our clubs continue to be very popular. As always, we appreciate the work of the club coordinators who make the club activities possible. A new club, Chamber Music, was formed this past year, and there's also an interest in forming a few more. Look for an electric vehicles club, a makers club, and also reviving the Global Lunch Club. That's the past year, and here's a bit of foreshadowing for the future. Your board met last week to consider the future of Encore Learning. As you might guess from your own interactions, our demographics, while not diverse, also trend old. We have many more members over 75 than the few between 50 to 65. What does that tell us? We need to have new members from the next generation and from very varied backgrounds to continue Encore Learning's good work. We all agreed that when we get our message out, it's well received, but we need a concerted effort to do just that, communicate our message. Thus, we're looking at ways to how best market our message. More on that effort as they develop. But if any of you have a background or know of anyone whose background is in marketing, and who would like to join us and assist us, please let us know. The board's also looking at how we work as a board, i.e. how we govern, how our governance works. We're looking at having committee chairs joining executive committees meetings from time to time, and perhaps having term limits for our leadership positions. Again, our members' input on these and other issues is always welcome. We know that members wish to have more opportunities to get together in person, so we're also looking at ways to achieve this coming year. We're planning a member open house for September 19th and hope to offer ways for members to meet up after courses during the fall. And on a personal note, I have to note that working with such a dynamic and engaged board is a real pleasure. It also keeps my brain active. In addition to our board and committees, all of what I have just described is possible only because of the more than 150 people who volunteer each year. On behalf of the board, I thank each of you for contributing your time and expertise. You make it possible to bring high-quality, low-cost programs to our community. I want to mention one last notable item from last year. Encore Learning has been the recipient of many generous donations. Members make contributions from time to time or when they register or renew a membership, and these generous donations allow us to keep our dues and our course fees level. We also have donors who remember us in memoriam of a loved one. So to the 150 or more individual donors, thank you for thinking of Encore Learning and know that your support sustains us. And now for a little bit about our present financial position. We'll have a short report from Encore Learning's treasurer, Steve Shapiro.
Good morning, everyone. I wanted to provide a brief summary of Encore Learning's fiscal condition. As shown in the summary financial statement, despite lower revenue from memberships and class fees, we have been able to generate a small operating surplus. This result is attributable to three main factors. Thanks to the generosity of several members, we received over $11,000 in contributions to the general fund. We were also able to generate over $17,000 in interest income by reallocating some of the endowment into high-yielding government-insured bonds and CDs. And finally, we were able to carefully control operating expenses and keep them slightly below our budget estimates. Our balance sheet remains strong, with approximately $500,000 in assets. In the spring of 2023, we made a decision to shift some of our funds to an account at Fidelity Investments, which would produce a more predictable level of investment income. Likewise, we opened a money market fund at United Bank so that we could earn more income on our idle working capital balance.
Go ahead, Marilyn.
Okay, thank you, Steve. And now an update about special events from Louise Kenny, a member of the Special Events Committee.
Thank you, Marilyn. Hi, everybody. Again, I'm Louise Kenny. I'm a member of the committee, but I'm actually representing Chris McLaughlin, who's our illustrious leader. And I'm representing other committee members, Debbie, Paula, David, and Jan on the committee. So, but again, we could always use new people. So please think about that. We do basically three things. We have Encore Learning Presents, which are virtual presentations on Monday afternoons. And some of you may have been at some of them. Recently in April, we did one on banning books. Not too long ago, we did one on Robert E. Lee and Me, presented by the author of the book, Robert E. Lee and Me, which was an outstanding presentation. And by the way, these are often recorded. So that one in particular, you might want to access on the website. We also do online tours of art museums. We, in the past year, did one on Salvador Dali from the Dali Museum down in Florida. And then we do in-person tours. We do a number at the Library of Congress, not just the main library, but also areas that people don't normally get to go to. We did one on the music division, and recently we did one on the Copyright Office, since the Copyright Office is part of the Library of Congress. And we recently did one at the Postal Museum. So we do like to have in-person events as well. We have an upcoming one going to Planet Word, and I'm told that registration opens at noon today. So if you don't want to get shut out, this is the get after this meeting, think about coming back on at noon. Our criteria for events is, what do we personally like and find interesting, since we think that we represent generally the membership. Also, is it a unique opportunity? There are so many opportunities in Washington, so we really try to dig a little deeper to see what people might not have gone to, or what would be a behind the scenes kind of tour. And then also a varied group of activities. Some we have political speakers, some we have cultural speakers. Again, we have the tours. So we really try to make it varied as well. So also, I wanted to mention to everybody listening to this, if you have an idea for a tour, for an event from a speaker, please do contact us. And it would be Chris McLaughlin, or you can contact Patty at info@encorelearning.org. Because really, we're all listening to things out there, and it's really helpful. For instance, Robert E. Lee and me, I heard him speaking on NPR. I bought the book. I thought it was so interesting. And then I just reached out and contacted him on his website. So you never know who's available and what's out there. So please do contact us if you'd like to be part of the committee, or even if you have some ideas. So with that, I would like to pass it on to Carol Fuller, who is the Class Aide Committee co-chair. Carol?
Okay, thank you, Louise. Good morning, everyone. I would like to add, first of all, my thanks to Gail Massot, leaving the board and leaving as co-chair. I learned a lot from her during my first year as co-chair. Gail, we'll miss you. I also want to thank John Metzler for agreeing to be co-chair in the coming year, and I look forward to working with you. This last year has been a great year for us with the Class Aide Committee. Of the 64 classes, we had 67 different class aides, and many of those were new. So we're very appreciative for those who served this last year. Going forward, we're going to have our Class Aide coffee, as we do every term, on June 6th at Lover Run. During that, we're going to be asking for suggestions and comments about how to improve what we're doing with class aides and in our meetings. And we're also going to reconstitute the Class Aide Committee that will help with actually recruit more of you to come to be class aides and to help in all the logistics. The Class Aide sign up will take place in August when the brochure comes out, and we'll be asking to volunteer before the September 9 registration, although we welcome many afterwards as well. Remember that if you're a Class Aide, folks, if you are a Class Aide in person, you get free parking at GMU if that's where your course is. And if you're a virtual Class Aide, you get a free course for the next semester. So there are perks for being a Class Aide in addition to being fun. The training for next term in the fall will take place September 24 to 26. It's probably going to be a little different this time because based on some of the suggestions, we'd like to do some more hands-on experience and more demos, a little bit less of talking, a little bit more of showing and participation. And with that, we welcome more suggestions. We welcome more volunteers. Please let us know how we can improve things. And we look forward to working with you in the coming year. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you, Louise. And now on to the highlight of today's meeting. Let me introduce our guest speaker, Libby Garvey. Libby is currently chair of the Arlington County Board and soon to be the former member of the Arlington County Board, as she's retiring at the end of this year. Libby has a rich background with a focus on education. After her stint with the Peace Corps, serving in the Central African Republic in her youth, Libby served with the Arlington School Systems PTA. She moved on to run for and be elected to the school board, where she served for 15 years until 2012 when she joined the Arlington County Board. Libby was also part of Arlington 50, a look at the county's future. You may also recall that Libby hosted one of our special events this past year, examining the book, The Fourth Turning is Here. I look perhaps a little dark at the future. Libby's agreed to share with us today some of her thoughts about the future. Thank you, Libby.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Good, 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 good. And keep your cameras on, Marilyn, or somebody, because it's kind of weird to just talk to a screen. It's nice to have a few faces for some reactions. I at least know if I'm not being heard. I'm just delighted to be here. Thank you. It's an honor. I found myself thinking back when I first got started, the person who probably is in some ways the most responsible for getting me launched on this career is John McCracken, whom some people may remember. And I remember now John talking to me back in the mid-90s about this educational this kind of education for people after they've gotten, they've retired and all, and how important this was. And I remember listening to it and thinking, oh yeah, that doesn't really apply to me, but yeah, it sounds cool. And here we are, and I am planning to retire at the end of this year from the elected work. I'm not going to be running for election anymore, but I'm certainly planning to stay involved, and I suspect I'll probably become a member because it really sounds really cool, everything you're doing. So thank you. I will talk a little bit about 2050. I've got my time. Marilyn, how long do I have? Was it like 30 minutes total with a little bit of talking and then some questions? Is that what we're doing?
I know that you have a busy schedule, but we were planning to have you here at least until 10:45.
Yes, 10:45 sounds good. And
Okay.
Yep, that's fine, which is about that time frame. So let me go. I've got myself to set a timer a little bit. So let me start off a little bit with visioning Arlington 2050. When I got on the school board back in 1996, one of the things we were doing then we were in the process of hiring a superintendent. And the superintendent we hired was really big into strategic planning. And we did a strategic plan. It took about 18 months to put it together, but that became a real working document. So budgets referred to it, and it was re-upped every 6 years. And I really kind of began to appreciate how important strategic planning is. When I got onto the county board, I realized we didn't have one. And I said, I thought this would be a really good idea, but the county board, my colleagues at that point were not used to doing strategic plans, didn't like the idea. And so anyway, my thoughts never went anywhere as far as strategic planning went. But I have found over the years, particularly most recently with the whole very controversial issue of missing middle or expanded housing options that we adopted. And I realized that to me, part of the problem was what we were trying to adopt was a tool to get us to a vision, but we never stated clearly what the vision was. And that I felt we really needed to be doing that. And now I have a board that's a little bit more interested in doing some strategic planning and looking ahead. And so we've launched this process. It's going to be somewhat long this year. It's really just visioning. And we started off with a kickoff, I think, and we're kind of looking at we picked the year 2050. That just seemed like a good year. And a lot of different plans go out that far. One of the motivating phrases that I like to use with people is Yogi Berra's, if you don't know where you're going, you won't get there. I love that. I love Yogi Berra-isms. And again, I think we need to be a little bit clear about where we want to go. This is an extremely diverse county. Not in even the usual ways we think about it, but I think if you look at people's visions, there are people who say they love Arlington and they're envisioning, the leafy tree suburbs and how, it's kind of, you feel almost like you're in the country. And then other people say they love Arlington and they think the hustling, bustling, almost Manhattan vibe of National Landing or Roslyn, and they'll both come together and say, I love Arlington. And yet they have two completely different visions of what they're talking about. So I think it's important to kind of get explicit about what we're talking about. And again, think out about where we want to go. I think there's the next slide is probably good to get to the next one. I'll just talk a little bit about the kickoff event we did. So we have these postcards from the future and they're out and about everywhere. You can go online. There's a QR code there and it's easy to go online and do this with a QR code. You can get hard copies, a real postcard if you'd like, at our public libraries. And the idea is this is just simply a prompt. And we're really trying with this to get as much input from as many people as we can, including kids. And you're really just imagining yourself in the year 2050, and you're looking back and you're writing a postcard to Arlington in the year 2024. And you're saying, dear Arlington 2024, things are great here in 2020, in 2050. Arlington is just wonderful. It's perfect because what? What do you like about it? So sort of sharing your vision. People can also say how we get there. It's really just kind of to prompt some people's thinking. So we really welcome people to fill out these postcards. They're getting collected. We've got somebody coming on board in just a little bit to really help corral this and get it set. And we'll be pulling them all together. We're also going to be having some events, which maybe you all would like to hold one. Yep, there you go. I love that picture of the drop box because people really are doing this and leaving them in the box. And as I say, it includes kids, which is great. The kickoff itself was a panel. I had sort of thinking about it because when you are looking to the future, you know, you might think about what is it going to be like then, right? So I had a climatologist. We had Jason Samanow of the Post come. And talking about the future climate, because that's one of the things that's kind of really baked in now. People can talk about the future and like it doesn't seem very real, but with climate change and things, people do have formulas and stuff. They kind of know what it's going to be like. I also had a demographer come in, and he was from the Weldon Cooper Center, and he talked about Hamilton. I'm going to blank on his last name. His name is right up there, Hamilton Lambert. And he talked about what things are going to be like demographically. And that, again, I was thinking, you know, when you're looking out to the future, how our demographics are going to be is kind of baked in as well in many ways. And then kind of for reaction, I had a business view, and had somebody from Steve Hartel from Amazon just talk about the business view a little bit, and from education viewpoint, and had Dr. Gray Washington, who's the president of George Mason University, who was really great. He's done a lot of thinking about the future. So we had a panel discussion, and it was really went well. We had about 250 people there. Flip to the next one. We'll just move through these slides pretty quick. These were the conclusions that kind of came out. We had a great discussion afterwards. One of my favorite things I felt like I'd done a good job with this panel was they all kind of bonded a little bit ahead of time. We worked out on the stage, and then afterwards, everybody stayed. They were all interacting with each other even long after the panel was done, which meant that people really engaged, which was great. I don't know that there's a huge surprise here, but you know, Arlington, we're going to get warmer and wetter. And that's going to keep going. And we've got a lot of different kind of things coming. This is from the heat, obviously, from Jason Samanow talking about it, and all of the things coming with climate change. Next slide. If there's a next one, that one. Yeah, we can. I don't know. Are you able to just turn off the slides for a minute? We can put that one up when I move to this topic. So back on the 2050, I hope people will put things together, think about what they want things to be like. And again, this is really just kind of gathering ideas. The point of the program was to give people a little basis on what it's going to be like then in the future, because if you're going to think about how you want things to be in the future, it helps if you have some idea of what it's going to be like in the future. So that's going on. This group has seen a lot and is a very educated group. And I think you might have some really interesting ideas. I don't know how many of us are going to be around in 2050, but a lot of us might be. And I think this generation, I think most of us are boomers. I do think we have a lot to offer because of all of what we've kind of been through in life and thinking to the ahead where we want to go. And that then does bring me to the next topic, which is the fourth turning. And that was a great book talk that we did, that we had a while ago. And you can put up just the cover if you want. I don't know how many people have read the book. Before we get to 2050, we have to get through a lot of years. And the fourth turning is a second edition really of a book that came out first in 1996. And it is basically a cyclical view of history. I found it very helpful explaining to me what was going on in 2020. I was chair of the board in 2020 during the pandemic, during all the issues with George Floyd, and had just come off chairing the board when we got to January 6th. In the middle of 2020, a friend gave me this book, the original one, which was just called The Fourth Turning. And that's a theory of history. Marilyn, I'll assume most of the people here maybe didn't attend the book. I'm going to probably repeat things a little bit. I apologize, but I think I need to do that to talk about it. And then we'll get to questions and some discussion. So back in the 90s, the Neil Howe and his friend William Strauss had written a couple of books. The more best known probably is Generations, and that was a generational view of history is what they were looking at. They coined the term millennials. That comes from their book. And what they they're positing is that, generations really affect history quite a bit. And the book they were going to write together was going to look at the Revolutionary War, the American Revolution, through the eyes of different generations. Clearly generations is their kind of shtick. So if you are somebody, you know, coming just like growing up at the time of the American Revolution, say ages 10 to 25 or so, you know, you've got a kind of, you know, what's going on. It's kind of like all you know. That's what you're being born in the middle of this kind of chaotic time. If you're on the older generation, like George Washington or Ben Franklin, and you're looking at this possibility of a revolution against the greatest power in the world, you're thinking, oh my God, this is, oh my heavens, you know, you're worried. You're trying to think about what you've been through a lot. You've got a concept of how rough and tough this could be. If you're Thomas Jefferson or Alexander Hamilton and kind of, you know, young 30s, it's kind of like, oh, cool, a revolution. This is going to be so exciting. It's cool. We're going to change everything. The world's going to be great. So each generation has a view of things. And while they were going to write, that was sort of the book they were going to write. As they started researching it more, they realized they saw a pattern that repeated every 4 generations. And that's what of every turning is switching to the next generation or to the next stage. So we're in the middle of a very interesting turning, the 4th turning. They're in the theory, there are 4 of them. The first one is when many of us were young kids coming of age. We'd just come out of World War II, the Great Depression, some really horrible stuff, and things are great in general. The economy, like in the late 40s and the 50s, the economy doubles. Everybody gets indoor plumbing. You got, you know, they've got the GI Bill. Lots of people are going to schools. Families are important. PTAs are formed. All kinds of community organizations. Children are supported. It's kind of a golden era in many ways. Society kind of coming together after a really rough time. Then you get 20 years out, which gets you to around the mid 60s. Okay. And that is a period that they call kind of the Great Unraveling, or the principled awakening. Actually, that's the next one. So the young people, my generation, who grew up in this wonderful time, all of a sudden discover, oh my God, we've got segregation in the South. This is terrible, and Jim Crow laws and how horrible that is. And oh my God, look at this war in Vietnam. What a terrible, we're killing women. Why are we doing this? Is terrible. The world is a mess. We've got to fix it. And young people of our generation, for the most part, we came from a very secure era, didn't kind of worry too much about things. So we just launched protests and started to try to fix the world. And that was a lot of tumult then in our, you know, in our young adult years. So that's kind of your Great Awakening. Things start to get kind of shaken up. Then you get to the next one. So you're like 3 generations out, right? You're like 60 years out or so. You start to get into the Great Unraveling. And this is more getting into like the 80s and the 2000s. And that's when you've got a lot of institutions falling apart. So you have the Catholic Church, all of a sudden, all the scandals, right? You have public education, the great crisis in public education. Our schools are all wrong and all bad. You have various kind of, the Boy Scouts, all kinds of institutions that were just sort of accepted as being wonderful. And now, of course, we're to the Supreme Court, right? They're all kind of unraveling. And the sense that they sort of were strong, wonderful, good institutions, all of that's falling apart. So that gets you through the 3rd turning. That brings you to the 4th turning, which is where we are now, which, if I can use a little French, is when all hell breaks loose. It's real chaos. And that's kind of where we are now. When I try to get people interested in looking at this book, I say how the first version that they wrote back in 1997 is when it was published. They were going over this theory and said, so right about 2006, there's going to be a major crisis. It'll probably be financial. And then when you get to 2020, then you're going to have several, 2, maybe even 3 crises altogether. It could be a war. It could be a pandemic. It could be climate change. And you will see a rise in authoritarianism. They were kind of right on the money, right? And this theory, it's actually, they're not, which he explains in this book, they're not the first ones really to come up with it. It goes way back, various, through the ages, various cultures have had theories of this kind of cycle of human development. In part, the idea is that things have to fall apart to pull together and then get better. But we're right now in the pulling apart time. And it's pretty It's pretty scary. The fourth turning before this one was, as I started out, the Great Depression, World War II. Before that, it was the Civil War. Before that, it was the Revolutionary War. Before that, there was a revolution in England. They kind of take it all the way back to basically when city-states and things started forming. Modern civilization is when we started to develop this pattern. The idea being that each generation is formed by the era they live in, and then they go on to form the next era. So that kind of just kind of repeats in a cycle. I think I will pretty much stop there. I do want to say that one of the main lessons that I've taken away and I'm trying to take to heart is that the job of our generation, we're called the prophet generation, is what he calls us right now, is to help get us through this crisis. So we've seen a lot, and we're here to help younger people get through this crisis and come out on the other side. Hopefully we do come out on the other side. Sometimes a fourth turning does not actually yield the golden age that comes next. Sometimes you have 100 years of chaos, and obviously with the issues that we've got facing us with climate change, the possibility of nuclear war and a few things like that, the fourth turning could be really bad, and maybe we don't even get through it. Hopefully we will. But we've got a job to do, and that's somewhat informing ourselves and then helping the younger generation, sort of providing some sort of sense of leadership and guidance to the younger folks coming behind us to help them get through this and hopefully get to the next golden age in the next cycle. All right, I'll take questions. Is that all right, Marilyn?
It's perfect. I'm going to ask you a question, and you can use your prognostication skills for this. And
I don't know if I have any. Okay, go ahead.
No, it's probably terribly unfair, but obviously our generation has gone through a lot of changes. But one of the things that's really big right now, of course, is technology and AI. How do you see that either helping us or hindering us for this fourth turning?
Yeah, it's both. And I'm just starting to get acquainted with AI. One of the I listened to Ezra Klein. I don't know how many of you do. Great podcast, and he did a series on AI a couple of years ago, and then he kind of re-upped it and started a new series with two or three different. And I would highly recommend listening to it. I think AI, the way I'm trying to think about it a little bit is it's a tool, like any tool. So it's how you use it. And in fact, it is extremely disruptive. And you can look back during the when the printing press was invented, and they started printing the Bible, and people could read the Bible, and that started to dissolve the church and everything. That was an incredibly disruptive time. Lots of revolution, lots of upset. It's kind of, I think, analogous in the kind of effect that it might have on us. So yes and no, yes and yes. I think it's going to affect us both positively and negatively. It depends what we do with it. I do think staying grounded and trying to stay centered and not get too carried away with it is something that hopefully our generation can help with a little bit. I am thinking about this a lot. I don't know if we want to get into it, but one of my concerns now, just to be very practical, is this fall and the very distinct probability, really, that we're going to see a lot of generated AI fakes during the election season. And you will have all kinds of things that may come on. There may be generated fakes, like saying that there's going to be, there's a bomb at a polling station, or that such and such a politician has done such and such. And then you've got to figure out that, no, that's a fake. And then you've got to let people know it's a fake. And how do they know what's fake and what's real? It's really hard. And I do sometimes think that the solution, I've been talking a little bit with our folks, I'll see we get, is somewhat, we need to also be able to fall back on, I think, mid-20th century techniques that don't get hacked. So things like maybe your old-fashioned radio station that's broadcast like here to give you information, maybe old-fashioned things like paper that you can pick up at a fire station or community center that gives you some good information. I don't know, certainly face-to-face conversations. But, they could do a big deep fake of me or of you, right, Marilyn?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we just have to keep common sense. And I think one of the important things is to really try to stay centered and stay calm and not get pulled off by whatever gets thrown at you. You need to, take a deep breath and analyze what things are and whether they make sense. Does that answer your question a little?
Well, it helps me think as well. Because I read, like all of us do, all the issues that are facing us. I'm a big believer in education, obviously, and I think the more people know how to think, there's a better chance that they'll be able to make that kind of discrimination, which is terribly
Absolutely.
important.
And I think actually that AI, after listening to Ezra Klein and thinking about it, I think AI could be really helpful actually in education in the future.
Yeah.
Because of the way AI works and the way, education works. Part of the difficulty is you've got all of these kids in a classroom and one teacher trying to reach each one of the children. It's hard. If you've got some AI interactions that the kids can do to get themselves, and then a teacher to be there for the social interaction to help them and help them learn to think.
Yeah.
I think that could be really helpful. So it's got incredible, probably like every technology, the possibilities of doing good are incredible, but the dangers are also quite severe.
And we've only begun to scratch the surface, obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about the rest of our members? Any questions for Libby?
Marilyn, we have just a comment that was shared by Tom Adams that I
Okay.
wanted to share. That he shared, it was great to hear that your public service was inspired by John McCracken, who was a civic dynamo and seemed to have a finger in every significant endeavor to move Arlington forward. He fronted the money to start Encore Learning, and we honor his memory with a scholarship at George Mason. So thank you for so ably carrying his efforts forward.
Oh, that's great. He was a great friend and mentor of mine. When I ran for school board the first time, I lost back in 1995, I think it was. And I got this call. Somebody reached out and said, I have somebody who'd like to meet you.
Wow.
And I met with, it was Herschel Cantor, I think, and he took me to meet with John McCracken at, I think, the press club. We had lunch. I'd never met him before. And he talked to me and asked me a bunch of things and then listened. And he finally said, well, you're still young. You're young yet. I'd like you to, and you have a temper. I understand that. I'd like you to run for school board again and I'll help you. That did it.
There you go.
We have a question in from Mildred Patterson. She asks, do you have confidence that our institutions such as the courts will hold the line in defending our laws?
No. I hope they will. I hope they will. Yeah, I can't say absolutely I have confidence that they will. No. I hope they will. I think as with so much that's going on, it's depending on individual people, right? And the quality of the people that we have. And will it hold? I hope so. Because there are bad people out there. There's a lot of stuff going on that's pretty dangerous. I'll talk, this group would appreciate this. There's a the Shakespeare play, I think it's Richard II, which I can't say I've read. I don't think I did. But I saw an interesting analogy comparing what was going on in the play Richard II to what's happening now. So I think if I've got the right one, somebody here I'm sure knows much more than I do. Richard comes to power because he's kind of planted some people in the audience. I think the king dies. Maybe he killed the king. Sorry, I should know this. I don't. And he's planted people to say all of a sudden, Richard, we need Richard for king. And people are kind of looking around. They're like, well, I guess so. Richard. So he becomes king because he's kind of arranged and organized the whole thing. And most people just kind of go along. And the article that I read said that you look at all the different character types. So there is a point here. I am going to bring it up to where we are today. So you've got the people who are your Richards, your Trumps, or whatever. You've got people who are willing shills to go along and try to bring this person to power, and that kind of plays out. You've got people who sort of see what's going on, but they just don't want to see it, and so they're just going to like go along and pretend and keep their heads down because they're scared. You've got people who really don't see anything, the sheep, right? And they just kind of, oh, whatever, it's all fine. And then you've got the good people who are trying to fight it. And you also, of course, have the folks that kind of arrange it. They're going to ride this tiger. Ooh, I'm going to stay with this guy. He may be terrible, but I could get rich. I could get powerful, whatever. In the end, the people who rode the tiger get eaten by the tiger, right? And I think that is kind of what happens over time. The question is, how fast does it happen and how much damage happens and how strong are the good people? How stupid are the sheep? So I don't know if that was helpful. I'm good at tangents. Sorry.
Thank you. We're going to take one more question that's come in from Marjorie Signer. People are living longer today than ever before. How are we adjusting to that, or are we?
Oh, good question, Marge. Nice to hear from you. Well, I have my mother here. Part of the reason I have to leave quickly is to get over to her house before my next meeting because she's about to turn 96. She doesn't eat if I don't sort of make sure she eats. I'm not sure how we're going to adjust, except that I think our generation, to some extent my mother's too, our parents, we're redefining age. So I don't know about any of you. I'm 73. I just turned 73. And when I was younger, 73 was like, oh my gosh, you're finished and old. And I mean, it just seemed like so old. And what could you do? Now I realize I think much more I think it's the the Hindus look at life in 4 different stages. You can, right, if you say 100 years, 25 each, right? And the last stage is, you know, if you're in good health, if you've got energy, it's a stage where you kind of can come to terms with life a little bit yourself, this crazy thing we call life, but also, again, help the younger people come along. And I think if we do it right, us baby boomers who, you know, caused a mess back then in the 60s and 70s, but they were things that needed to be changed. If we can harness that, which groups like Encore Learning, I think, are doing, we have a lot to offer to help the young people kind of come through it. So how is it going to affect? Hopefully we will use wisdom. We will use kindness, understanding, patience, and some courage to help the next generations come along. And if we can do that, our effect will be quite positive. But it all depends on us, I guess. I don't know. Is that an answer?
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Libby.
Yeah.
We really enjoyed your comments and a lot of thought-provoking issues here.
Yeah.
And I hope you learned a little bit about Encore Learning. We welcome you.
I do. I probably will join you. What you do is
Great.
right up my alley. Love this stuff. As you can tell, just push a button. I go off on all kinds of tangents. It's
Excellent.
better if I have an organized speech, which I didn't have. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate
Yeah,
it.
great to see everybody. Thanks for what you do. Take care.
Okay.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
I guess I should turn this over to you, Laura, for just a minute.
Great. Thank you so much. We are continuing the business meeting of Encore Learning, and I'm pleased to have a few minutes just to thank all of you wonderful volunteers. As Marilyn said, we have more than 150 volunteers every year that serve in a variety of roles. You're just fantastic. I think one of my highlights of the year was meeting some new volunteers. I met some new class aides. If some of you are on this webinar and know that I'm thinking of you. So really appreciated some of the new volunteers we had, and a reinvigorated membership committee. Got a picture of them, their recent meeting here. And we have a new volunteer chair, Jane Naj, who there's a picture here of Jane reading during story time here at Mason Plaza. So they asked for volunteers, and Jane stepped up and she read to some toddlers just a couple weeks ago. It was a hot day, actually. So volunteers do a variety of things. We have volunteers at information booths. They're class aides. They're editing the catalog information. They're instructors. So all sorts of roles, and we really appreciate every one of you, and thank you for your time and your expertise. It really keeps our high quality programs as well as maintain them as affordable. At this time, I'm going to share a slideshow. Hopefully it plays.
But before you do that,
Yes.
I want to take one quick minute. I know you thanked our volunteers, and we do, but I also want to thank our terrific staff. Donna, Carrie, Laura, Patty, you make it possible, and thank you very much. We also want to thank George Mason University, Arlington 55+, the Alliance for Arlington Senior Programs, the libraries, Arlington Community Learning. We get support from all these organizations, so thank you. Okay, Laura, it's all yours.
Great. Thank you, Marilyn. And let's see if this will play. Oops. Thank you all for agreeing to be in these pictures. And we'll have this video up online on our YouTube channel later today or tomorrow, so you can watch it again. I know some of those pictures come by pretty quickly. At this time, we're happy to answer any questions you might have. We do have one comment that came in earlier, and that was regarding special events. Now that COVID is behind us, is there any consideration being given to having wonderful author talks again at the Central Library? It was a nice opportunity for members to get together, and since they were open to the general public, it was good opportunity to attract new members.
It's certainly something that's come up again and again, and we are looking at it very carefully. And yes, I know it was a very popular program and also a good way to attract new members. Yeah, it's being looked at, of course.
Somebody offered earlier, it was Joanne offered earlier, about what links could we forge with older high school leaders for dialogues and possible seminars. I think that's something that is interesting, and I think that Encore Learning could certainly look at doing some intergenerational programming, and with Encore Learning. If there's a volunteer that wants to take that on, we'll make it happen.
It's a good suggestion. Yeah.
And
Well-
somebody earlier also offered, Ray offered that for us boomers, Hair the Musical at Signature Theater gave us a look at how look back or how the current generation of actors sees that era. So any other questions? Happy to respond to questions that come in the chat or on Q&A. We are planning a member open house on September 19th. And watch your emails for information about that, as well as we'll have a table at the Arlington Philharmonic concert at Pops in the Park on June 23rd. And as you may know, we had 4 classes that were recorded this semester. People have been asking for that. And so we recorded 4 classes. And those are available. If you missed a class, you can register now and watch the recordings of that class over the summer. So you have until June 30th to sign up for one of those and view those recordings. So check that out. We sent an email about that on, well, Monday, and you'll get more information about that as well. Check our website and feel free to sign up for that. If there's a good response to that, we might do more of it. If people don't end up signing up for it, it may be something that we not allocate resources to. So we'll see how that goes. Trying it out, pilot.
It's kind of summer school, right?
Yes. And we do have special events going on over the summer. We've got as Louise mentioned, we've got a special event on Monday, as well as a upcoming tour of the Museum of the Word. And the fall semester is looking fantastic with 37 classes and a good mix of in-person and virtual. So it's all because of the
All
work
good.
you volunteers have done. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, if no other questions, then this will conclude our annual meeting. Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you.